There is Joe. All right. So, how's everybody doing this evening? This is, I'm pretty sure, this is the second meeting of the Jijang Bosal Book Club. And we are still reading the Ksitigarbha Sutra, which could be called the Jijang Bosal Sutra or the Jizo Bodhisattva Sutra, if you wanted to call it that. But generally, people call it the Ksitigarbha Sutra just because Ksitigarbha is so much fun to say, I think. But or maybe people are showing off. Oh yeah, it's called the Ksitigarbha Sutra. People trying to show off their Sanskrit skills. But is my sound good? Everybody can hear me
Yes.
clearly. It's coming through. Good. So last time we had a lot of discussion, and I think it's better for us to talk about whatever anyone has that they want to talk about, rather than go through, something that I prepared. I've got stuff to talk about. I've got stuff that I like to talk about too, but I would like to kind of defer to everyone else and see what you all are thinking about all this.
You know what I was that actually reading and thinking has caused me to reflect a little more on my practice and the way I practice and the things that have drawn me in practice. I think I would say I kind of operate energetically, in that when something moves me in a way, I feel like I need to pay attention and I pursue it or have it. So one of the things, before we get into specific stuff in the readings or whatever, that I actually have found myself wondering more since we started this, and I have begun the reading, is I would be interested in your comments about faith. And part of what I mean is, like, I started thinking about in my practice, I don't remember specifically why Jesus was so appealing to me, or as I heard about him or her, I was more and more intrigued and involved. And so that's how I ended up with the book. When I said I got the book on him and read it. And at my meditation table, I have a Jizo. I find myself drawn to, like, I have my favorite mala that I want to practice with and use. There are, particularly since my aneurysm, I wear eye amulets. I find myself actually wondering about, and then there's a piece of me that's like, I should be able to sit naked outside that didn't require anything of anybody or any dress up or attachment, and just experience, so there's some of this has made me reflect on how I practice, the things that have drawn me in practice. And is Jesus really out there going down and helping the people in hell? And because I believe that, is that something my mind, it's almost like when Daniela talked about how we attach the story to the experience. And so there's part of me that feels like I'm making up stories that suit my sense of faith, versus there is an entity or an experience or something. Is it all just consciousness at play? Is it? So I guess I'm actually starting to question. It's making me think, and maybe I'm doing too much mentalizing now, versus practicing, touching, having, reacting to things. That's a little bit wandering, but I guess it's a faith question and a reality question versus what I've just created in my head from what I need or what I've read or what appealed to me. So I've started kind of thinking, maybe I made this whole thing up. You know, I'm picking and choosing the things I'm drawn to and doing. Is there, what do you call faith? I mean, what do you think about faith, and why do we, maybe rituals, symbols? I'm not sure how to do you get kind of what my question is?
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for Jizo,
Mhm.
what does the word reality even mean? What is the realness of that?
Mhm.
So any commentary you might have on that, I would appreciate hearing.
Great. Well, so I would like to hear from Elizabeth and Joe on this, because this is absolutely anybody who like has ever done Zen or any kind of meditation or any kind of Buddhism or any kind of real, you know, I would say spiritual practice, or it has to have looked at this. And the longer they've done it, the more it comes up. This is not something that is just resolved. Okay. And I would say that if somebody thinks that they've just resolved the questions that you've raised, Blythe, that they're doing it wrong. Um, this is something that you have to think about and look at and ask about. It's inquiry. You know, our practice is inquiry. Our practice is not, you know, boom, getting answers. Our practice is asking questions. Um, if you want to get all zen about it, you know. But I'm just going to say that, and then I'm going to leave it off to um, Joe and Elizabeth to just say whatever they have to say about faith or any of the other things that Blythe touched on or looked at in what she had to say.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Go ahead, Joe. No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just think that's a great question to think about.
It's an interesting one, certainly. And I like that too, because I wouldn't have guessed that that would be a question that we would be holding and looking at in this group. And it's certainly a great question, wonderful. And well, I thank you for asking that, because
Well,
I
thank you.
think for me, I
It's
feel like
not directly connected to the book, I know, but it made me wonder about believing all the
sure.
things that were.
Sure. Well, things I think in our practice, things that I think because we've arrived at this practice, we've left behind other beliefs or other aspects of our society and culture that have been put on us. And I believe that, we're leaving those and dropping those back in our past. But here we are as at Zen centers, and we encounter not only just our practice, our inquiry, sitting within our communities, but then these figures of the bodhisattvas and so on and so forth, and like, okay, what are we supposed to do with them? Right? And for me, I'm trained as a visual artist, so for me, icons, iconography of sculpture, painting, calligraphy is very important for me. And I don't know the why or what of that, but it's almost like what you were saying, Blythe, about, well, why am I drawn to this personality or this bodhisattva? You know, I think our mind and maybe our hearts want to get cozy with that idea, and maybe make some projections about, oh, he's a warm fuzzy, or maybe sometimes when you see Jesus as these little baby roly-poly bodhisattvas that are so cute, but I think something with me stops me from going there to not, I mean, I can look at the warm fuzzies too, but I think for me, and pardon me for going on, I just think that from the Cincinnati Sangha, our teacher Mia Wall, Mark Davis, has, when he has spoken about Khenpo Bosal and Jijang Bosal, he's taken it away from maybe cold statues and gilded statues, but has really brought it back to us as individuals. How that when we're chanting to either of these, we're not imploring or pleading to some outside character to step in, and that has been very helpful for me to realize, okay, don't get fixated on having a patron saint, or looking for some sort of exterior help or guidance, and just that we are Khenpo Bosal, we are Jijang Bosal, and and those are our correct jobs, to in those roles, to perform our lives, or go through this life. Sorry, that was sort of deep, but there it is.
Like, I thought today, to be concrete or specific, I was, of course, really disturbed about I worked with kids. I was a kids counselor for years.
Mm-hmm.
And Nashville blew me again, which, all of them have done. And the first thing I started doing was chanting for them that Jesus would, and that's where it's like my questioning has kind of come in, like, do I think Jesus is going to show up in a red bib and gather them up and it's going to be great? I mean, it's like it was kind of almost an automatic response that I had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wish I could do was do something myself for them, or to help them, or what can I do? Then it's I don't know. I feel like and it's been interesting since we've started reading the sutra, and I'm thinking and paying more attention. I'm not just doing my practices like I usually do. I'm actually questioning my practices. I guess that's what I'm saying. And like, when a lot of the teaching is the best thing that could be is we would be praying for our ancestors, our parents, our family, when they're dead, that Jesus is going to go into hell and help them move out or get through hell, or come, and I've been doing those kind of visualizations and doing those kind of things like they were going to happen. And I started thinking, when I was praying for the little kids with Jesus chant, I was like, do I think he's going to go in there and get them and do something? It was just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of, somehow I was more automatically doing it
Mm-hmm.
before I started thinking too much about it, I guess, or analyzing it, or, is Jesus going to go save those little children? By save, I mean gather them up and take them, if there was any hell they had or any suffering they had, that he would do that with the families and with the. So when you were saying that, it's like I was kind of doing it with this sense that he was going to go in there and intervene.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm kind of wandering. I'm thinking out loud too much without, I should probably get my thoughts clear and wait and hear what Elizabeth is going to say.
Yeah, what is Elizabeth going to she tried to pass. She kind of tried to pass. We're going to bring it back to Elizabeth. Give her 1 minute.
No, I'm just
Thank
kidding.
you. No.
I'm just kind of twirling. That's
Well, so there's a story that was once told to me by a very interesting Tibetan teacher. She's American. She's an American woman who is a lama. She did a 3-year retreat many years ago. She waited until her kids were grown. Her name is Lama Chodron. She's actually lives in Richmond. I've met her a couple times. She comes up to DC for a little Tibetan group that I occasionally visit. But yeah, she told a story. I think it was about her teacher or some other Tibetan teacher, and somebody asked a similar question, like, "Is this real?" Because this teacher wasn't talking specifically about Jizo, but was talking about the 6 realms, and in particular, as old school Asian Buddhist teachers do, was going on about the hell realms. and so a student asked, "Are the hell realms real?" So you're talking about, Blythe. You're asking, is Jizo real? Is there really, is Jizo really there, or is this just a projection, of my mind? And that's what the student asks: is are these hell realms real, or are these just, states of mind? And the teacher said they're absolutely states of mind, just like everything else, just like the floor underneath your feet, just like, the sky and the earth. It all comes from mind. I mean, that's pretty standard Buddhist teaching. Mind creates everything. And so we, yeah, in a sense, I would say it's a false choice. There is still a difference between what's real and what's not. Okay. I mean, if you go to a old school Zen teacher and say, "Oh, it's all just in the mind," then they'll hit you in the head, with the stick. And they'll say, "That's all just in your mind." So no problem, right? So just because the stick and your skull is, just a projection of mind, but the pain is still, real, and the potential damage to your skull and to your brain can be quite real. And so, finding our way, through that is not simple. There's not a simple answer. This is real and that's not. This I have to take seriously and treat it as it's real. This I don't. It's, I would say, not as simple as that. And on the other hand, this teacher that was asked, believed in the reality of hell, believed that when you die, you go into the middle existence, and during a certain period of time, you travel through the middle existence, the bardo, whatever you want to call it, and then at the end of that time, you end up in a new lifetime, new body, and then you go on, and then that body will die, and you keep going. But then the question is that real? So that could be. So we have. I think in Western culture, we have a bit of a problem with this question: is it real? Because we've been told that that science provides the answers to those questions. I'm a scientist, and I know for a fact that science does not tell us what's real and what's not. Science doesn't even ask what's real and what's not. Science says, if I mix these two chemicals together, will it blow up? Science says, and science is always, science is like Zen. Science is about asking questions. And as soon as but it's a little bit different from Zen, because science it actually does acquire answers to questions, but they're specific answers to specific questions. And a true scientist, as soon as that question is answered, loses all interest in it and wants to move on to the next thing that hasn't been answered yet. That's science. Okay. So science doesn't tell us what's real and what's not. Science doesn't tell us, because science and mathematics actually do not prove anything. They're not about proving things. Now sometimes mathematics can prove things, but if you want to, I'm not gonna go on too big of a digression on science and mathematics and proving things and what's real. But if you want to cross the street, you gather a certain amount of data, but you can never be 100% sure, that a car won't come out of nowhere or something that you didn't see is going to run you down. So, I mean, and this comes back to the question of faith. Everything that we do requires faith. Everything that we do requires moving ahead with, even if you want to put it in very scientific terms, we always have imperfect information. And so we still have to make decisions based upon imperfect information. Science does not tell us. And then for the really important decisions in our lives, you fall in love with someone, you want to pick up a shelter dog, you want to change jobs or change careers or figure out what your career is going to be or what you're going to do with your life, or you're trying to figure out whether you've made a terrible mistake in deciding what you're going to do with your life. I mean, there's no equation to provide the answers to the real questions that are the most important, decisions that we make in our lives. And a factor in that is like faith. You have to decide for yourself what it is that you really, what you feel inside that you want to do with your life. It's one thing to say, what should I do with my life? Well, what do you want to do? That's what, when people would ask Zen Master Hsuan Hua, a question about that. In fact, I was there once when a friend of mine asked whether or not he should get married because he was thinking about becoming a monk, and he was sitting there right next to his girlfriend at the time. and Zen Master Hsuan Hua just laughed and he said, "What do you want to do?" And it although on other occasions, when the mood would strike him, Zen Master Hsuan Hua was perfectly capable of telling people what they should do. Oh, you should do this. He would like to. He would look at somebody and prescribe Chinese medicine to them. Just boom, just take one look at. But but figuring out what to do is well, and it requires faith. You have to have faith. Like if sometimes it doesn't. You have to have faith in yourself. This is especially true like for young people. Young people have to learn to develop faith in themselves, and they have to learn to develop some interest. A young person with no interests in their life and with no faith in themselves is really screwed. But it turns out that if you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years old and you have no interests and you have no faith in yourself, you're still screwed. You may have managed to get a job or something. You may have managed to find some way of passing the time. But if you don't have something, that you're passionate about, and if you don't believe in yourself, then you have a big problem. And so, believing in yourself, believing in Jizo, it can be difficult to draw the line. Yeah, but that's all I'm going to say. Oh, I will say one other thing. So this is not a new question by any stretch of the imagination, and especially in Zen Buddhism, we are often encouraged to not believe in anything outside of ourselves. To not and sometimes Zen teachers will go much further than that and say, "Don't believe all this Buddhist mumbo jumbo." And I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you in those words, but we hear it. We're told. In fact, a lot of times, Zen teachers, Zen people will try to make a distinction between Zen and Buddhism and say, "Oh, what we do is Zen. Buddhism is people believing in stuff. And we don't do that."
I started out that way. So
I started out that way. Oh, I absolutely started out that way. It's like the people who say, and this isn't just in Zen, the people who say, oh, the Buddha was just a human being, and all these stories about anything supernatural or whatever, and then and people and like you read Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Buddha is up in heaven, talking to his dead mother. I mean, that does not fit in with the narrative about the Buddha, just a human being with no special powers or anything like that. He's just like you and me. Yeah, if I can go up into heaven and talk to my dead mother, he's just like me. Um, but but that's not wrong either, in my opinion. Neither approach is wrong. The Buddha made a point of teaching people um, in whatever state of mind or state that they were in, and the Buddha realized that from the standpoint of the Buddha, we are all incapable of seeing what's real. That's our biggest problem. And to the extent that we think, oh, this is real, but that's not, that's part of the problem, because we are attached to the idea that we can tell the difference. If we could tell the difference between what's real and what wasn't, what isn't, we'd be enlightened. That is enlightenment. Buddha's a fully enlightened Buddha is someone who always sees things exactly as they are, and we don't. And so it's not that you should believe in Jizo or not believe in Jizo, or believe that Jizo is real or just a practice. What you should do is and you want to be careful with this. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to become unhinged, but you should you should question anytime you think that you know what's real and what's not. You should take a step back from that. Doesn't like I said, you don't want to become unhinged. You have to learn. We do look both ways before we cross the street. We do have to have a job or some source of income, to to be able to eat and pay the rent and stuff like that. I mean, reality exists, but our ability to see reality accurately is, questionable. But still, we have to use what we have. There, I said too much. I mean, so just one last thing: faith. A major part of faith is learning how to trust your own mind and your own Buddha nature, without thinking that you can. I don't know. Without thinking that you've got it all figured out. You have to start figuring some things out. A step at a time. And, one of the ways that we do that is we practice and we trust ourselves. When we practice and you feel things, you get, you read something. And the best thing that you said, Blythe, at the beginning is that, that this has had an impact on your practice. Because sutras are meant to do that. Sutras are meant to help us in our practice. And reading about it and talking about them is great. But we are all practitioners. We're not doing this as people who are just kind of having I called it a book club because I thought that sounded clever. But, I mean, really, unless you have a practice and unless what we're talking about connects to your practice, then, it's nice to sit and talk with each other. I wouldn't say that it has no value whatsoever, but it's not really correct. I'll say, if it's not connected to your practice. It's great to read the Ksitigarbha Sutra and sit with friends and talk about it, and you don't have to make it about understanding anything or getting enlightened, but it should be connected to your practice.
How closely, when you say it should be connected with your practice?
Oh, I don't think there's a formula for it. I mean, just that if so, if the Blythe already has practices that she connects with Jizo, and this kind of discussion that we're having is causing her to look into that. I mean, on the one hand, it's perfectly fine. If something terrible happens and you pray to Jizo for people who have suffered who have been killed in a horrific way, that's correct. That is the correct function of the heart. And it's good to have someone or something to pray to or to do in response to such things, but to also look into it and say what's really going on is also is also the correct function of the heart. In Buddhism, the heart and the mind are both here. They're not separate, and so I mean, there's certainly an emotional aspect to it and an intellectual aspect to it, but to the extent that the closer together they are, the better. I would say. So yeah, but so I guess I was responding most directly to Blythe's situation, knowing that I mean, she chants. She has a favorite Jizo mantra. Everybody should have a favorite Jizo mantra. There are lots of Jizo mantras. I think everyone should have a favorite. Um, I feel sorry for people who don't have a favorite. But and you don't have like my favorite is not Blythe's favorite. Um, and but it's no one should try to tell you what your favorite should be. You should decide on it yourself. Yeah. But this is directly related to this sutra and the things that we're talking about in this sutra, and it's absolutely not just relevant, but very important. And actually, so it is time. We should take like a 5-minute break now, and then come back and pick back up. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you for the comments.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
I am going to try to do a break of some sort. Let's see. Oh yeah, share my screen.
Oh.
Hello? I think I heard somebody say hello. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. I don't think it was me though.
Mm-mm. Elizabeth's microphone is on, so I think it was her. Hmm. Okay. So the break is over. Hi, Elizabeth. So before we go on with anything else, I just want to make a plug. I want to make two plugs for commentaries that I found. They're both freely available online, and they're both from fairly old school Asian teachers. One from a Chinese teacher and one from a Tibetan teacher, and they're both definitely the kind of people who would say that yes, the hells are real. Yes, Ksitigarbha is real. They would also agree that they are also projections of mind. Anyway, but let me just share my screen to show you these two things if I can find them. Let's see, not this here. No. Oh yeah, here it's. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, okay, good. All right. Move forward several slides. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So on this slide, there are links to actually three links. One is to, so the one that I want to especially recommend is Khenpo Sodargye's commentary. He is a teacher in the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. But although he's a teacher in the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, he's quite
is.
started. Oh,
Here we go.
oh, teacher, we missed you.
Yeah,
We thought it was a teaching trick. You were showing us you weren't real.
you know,
Poof, he's gone.
yeah. Let me see. Well, okay, here we go. Good. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry about that. So my computer never gives me a more than a few seconds warning, and sometimes not even that when I'm running out of power. And I thought I had my computer plugged in. I did, but I didn't.
Hmm.
Anyway, so but the meeting stayed up. The recording restarted, and now I'm going to continue with my attempt to plug Khenpo Sodargye's book, or books actually. So he's written 4 books, only 2 of which are out yet. But anyway, this is his commentary on the Ksitigarbha Sutra. And as I was trying to say before I was so rudely interrupted by the power and magic of electricity. Khenpo Sodargye, although a teacher in the Tibetan tradition, is very familiar with and very interested in Chinese Buddhism as well. And he makes a lot of references to the teachings of various Chinese Buddhist teachers in his commentary. And I like his commentary very much. And I'll include these links both in the downloadable version of this PowerPoint slide and also in the description section of the YouTube video when I upload the recording tomorrow sometime. Anyway, so this book right here, which is available online at this link. And then there's also a very nice commentary by Master Hsuan Hua, who again, both of these guys are very old school. They don't have any doubts about the reality of Jizo, Jijang, Ksitigarbha, hells, heavenly realms, all that. So it's interesting to read their commentaries, and I've so far found it quite helpful. And I just discovered the Khenpo Sodargye's today, or maybe yesterday. No, actually 2 days ago. But and Swan Hua's I've known about for a while. He is he's a little too old school for my taste, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, that's helpful. It's like, I like Stephen Batchelor, even though Stephen Batchelor, I totally disagree with a lot of his ideas, but he's a good writer and he's got interesting things to say. And if you just read or listen to things that you agree with, then you're stuck. So, now what should we talk about? What is Joe trying to hide? He's all blurred.
Oh. Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, now you're back. Okay, so we're kind of still talking about the first 4 chapters. The 3rd chapter is, I would hesitate to say that it's not that interesting, but it is. Basically, it's talking about hells. It has Elizabeth, actually, it's the one that has the bed story in it.
Right.
Everybody gets stretched out on the same bed, even though when you're on it, it looks like you're the only one. And it lists a bunch of different ways that you can end up going to Avicii hell, which is often just translated as the incessant hell. It's good to read it, and don't just actually try to read it through, I would say. But at the same time, once you've read it, and even if you look at a good commentary on it, That's basically it. It's descriptions of hell's. It's kind of a I would say a transitional chapter to the next chapter, chapter 4, um, which yeah, which is good. Now who here has read chapter 4? Right.
I'm only a 3.
What's that?
I said I'm a 3 girl.
You're on 3. Yeah, that's good. So I would say we should continue our discussion of chapter 4 into our next meeting because it is a very important story. It is very, very important chapter. The story of bright eyes or lotus eyes, but I think she's usually referred to as bright eyes, is a very, it's a little more, a little more complicated than the more famous story of the, of the woman whose mother died and she just prayed to the Buddha and boom, her mother was reborn in heaven. Bright eyes, her mother died, she prayed for her, and she came back as a servant's daughter, right? Or maybe a dog. Did she come back as a dog first? I can't remember. Is this the one?
Servant's son.
The
Servant's
servant's
son.
son.
And that was already a kind of a blessing because
Yes.
because of her
Yes,
daughter's prayers.
that's right. Yes.
Right.
And so in that story, when she is reborn as the servant's son into her household,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, it is her household.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then she's also, I think she's only supposed to live until she's like 13 or something like that. Isn't that right?
She got real lucky.
Yeah, but it turns out that is, well, we would say not written in stone. It's fungible, and so that's one of the themes of the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and it's a recurring theme in Buddhist teachings on karma. That on the one hand, as who was it? Was it Yvonne Rand? I can't remember now. I had it in one of my. I'm not sharing my screen right now, am I? I can't see my screen. Let's see. I'm trying to find it in the presentation. Oh yeah, it was Ruth Dennison. Yeah, as Ruth Dennison said, karma means you never get away with nothing. And that's true, but at the same time, the way in which karma plays out is, in fact, it's kind of like, well, it's actually not kind of like. In some stories, it's exactly like, you get arrested, you go to trial. It depends on how good of a lawyer you have, And Jijang Bosal, and this is actually something that's in the commentary that I just recommended by the Tibetan guy whose name I've already forgotten. He tells a story in his commentary about just about this that someone has died basically, and especially in Chinese Buddhism, the way that the whole process of what happens after you die is often treated very much as a judicial process. That there are judges or even a whole series of judges that you have to talk to, and Jizo or Jijang or Ksitigarbha or Dizang or whatever. I have no idea what the Tibetan pronunciation of his name is, but this is a story where Jijang Bosal just intervenes, and basically that's the whole story. It's like it intervenes. Oh yeah, so Jijang Bosal intervenes because this guy had one day, just walking along, minding his own business, looked down and saw a stick lying on the ground that looked interesting, and it had a carving on it. And he just took the stick home and put it in a corner, and it was a carving of Jijang Bosal. which he didn't know. But then when he was about to be condemned to Avicii hell or some hell, there's lots of other hells. Avicii hell is just the worst. Jijang Bosal comes up and tells the Lord of Death, oh, you can't do that. This person is one of my benefactors. So you must release him. And they actually argue a little bit about it. And finally, the Lord of Hell has a job. Jijang Bosal has a job, but at the end, if Jijang Bosal insists, the Lord of Hell has to give in. Lord of Hell or Lord of Death, I forget what he's called in this case, but and then this fellow is returned to life, to his previous life. And fortunately, his family had not buried him or cremated him or anything because he was still he was still a little warm. They said, he's not breathing. He's obviously dead, but he's still a little warm. We should not. Let's just. And then he wakes up, and he's full of remorse because he hadn't properly venerated this statue of Jijang Bosal. But just by keeping it in his house, that counted. But now he wanted to do much more, and so he built a shrine to it and everything else. But that's. Why did I tell that story? Because I like that story, but also because that's a case where a phrase that comes up in this sutra and in discussion about Jijang Bosal and Jijang Bosal's powers is the idea of fixed karma, or sometimes it's called fixed karma, sometimes it's called karmic obstacles, but it's well, so fixed karma in particular means either something really, really bad that you've done in this life or accumulated karma from past lives. And so it's karma that is difficult it's really what it is. It's difficult karma. Because if you've done something in this life up to a certain point, it's fixable by you. You can make up for it. You can either undo it or atone for it or make good on it, or whatever. If it's something that you've done that you're aware of, up to a point, then it is up to you to correct it. But past a certain point, if you kill a Buddhist nun, for example, one of the things that's listed in chapter 3 of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. If you do one of those 5 things that you kill your parents, kill a Buddha, stuff like that. And those are also, by the way, things that Amitabha, another famous figure in Buddhism, those are among the things, Amitabha says, all you have to do is chant my name and you will be reborn in my pure land. Unless, and then he's got a list of things that unless you did any of this stuff. Ksitigarbha is like, and that's kind of like fixed karma stuff, or the most fixed, the most difficult kind of karma, the worst karma, basically. And so that's one example of, which is a very important feature of Jijang Bosal Ksitigarbha, is that he's here for the worst of us. And then another thing that's also very difficult in terms of karma is karma from past lives. And when it comes to things, well, is that real? When it comes to Buddhist teachings that raise the question of, well, what's up with that? Is that really a thing? Past lives, of course, is a popular thing to question. But as a general rule, since we don't remember our past lives, or possibly don't believe in any such thing, then any karma that we have from those past lives is very difficult for us to see, very difficult for us to have any understanding of, very difficult for us to have any idea what can you do about it. So Jijang Bosal specializes in both of those kinds of things, really, really, really bad things that you've done in this life, or stuff that's left over from past lives that you don't understand, that you don't know, that you don't really know what to do about. And one of the greatest Zen teachers in Korean history, a guy named Sosan Tesa, specifically, he wasn't specifically talking about Jijang Bosal, but he was specifically talking about the whole subject of difficult karma. And he was primarily talking about the distinction between stuff that you know about, stuff that you've done in this life, and that you can fix yourself, and the other stuff. Like you can take past lives out of it altogether. If you find yourself unable, you don't know why you keep doing something. You don't know why something keeps happening. You don't know why you keep marrying the same person. You don't know why you keep getting the same boss. You change jobs 5 times, and it's always the same situation. You don't know why this keeps happening. Well, so you don't have to believe in past lives, but we all, I think, have experienced things where we don't know why this is happening and have no idea how to fix it. And so what Sosan Tesa said was that if there's something that you know how to fix, then fix it. If there's something that you don't know how to fix, then use mantra practice. He specifically was recommending mantra practice to fix the things that you don't know how to fix. And Jijang Bosal has a very special mantra. So I said I have a favorite Jijang Bosal mantra. My favorite Jijang Bosal mantra is the mantra for fixing the stuff I don't know how to fix. And that's the one that's included in the Jijang Bosal chant. It's Jijang Bosal's mantra, or actually it's called a Dharani, for destroying fixed karma.
That one.
Yeah. And we could go all back to this whole discussion that we were having before. Is that real? How does that work? Does chanting a mantra really do anything? And a lot of people just say, oh, chanting a mantra just helps you to calm and focus your mind. And of course, anytime that your mind is more calm and more focused, you're better able to not screw things up and to possibly even make things better. And so that's good. There might be a little bit more to it than that. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, and maybe there doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Question.
Yeah.
Because Kurt, I have this Jijang Bosal chanting list that I took and made my own print document out of. And I'm looking at that Dharani, that specific Dharani, number 3. And I'm really interested in the way that you've got these broken down for that one, or number 4 and 5 and so on. And I'm sort of amazed that this larger chanting piece has these components. And I'm also, so I'm thrilled with that. But I'm also thinking, like, what are my fellow American meditation sitters at my Zen center going to think if I tell them, well, look, that and Kwanseum Bosal chanting is just this list of 5 or so mantras for specific things. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah.
For me, it's important, but for others, it could be a real turnoff. Like, I don't want to chant that. I don't want to say that.
Oh, well, so I mean, Zen Master Sung San, to my knowledge, I mean, he's the only reason why I know about these
Mm,
chants.
true.
And he did not, well, he had a hard enough time just getting his, Western students to do the chants. Um, and, and he wasn't particularly interested. I mean, so one of the things that he was, so first of all, he had a struggle getting people to do the chants in the first place. Second of all, he was very distrustful of Westerners trying to apply their analytical thinking to figure things out. He was mostly, when you sit, just sit. When you chant, just chant. When you bow, just bow. When you eat, just eat. Like that. Um, but at the same time, in Korea, you can, get buy books that explain all. I mean, you can go online and for like less than $5, you can buy books that explain all these chants and mantras and tell you what they are. And it doesn't really. I mean, just to know, oh, this is a mantra that does this. I mean, that's really all you're talking about, Joe, right? It's just that, oh, here, this mantra, the title of the mantra is like this. The title of the mantra is Jijang Bosal's Dharani to eliminate fixed karma.
Right.
And
Right.
here's the Dharani. And that's all. It's just a little bit of information, but it's more than just saying something without having any idea of what you're saying.
Right. Right. Exactly. But it's
But
like a compilation of all of these various
oh, yeah, right. And
Dharanis and mantras. Yeah.
well, and so um, so one of the things that Buddhist teachers do is they use people's interest in mantras and dharanis, and in the fact that people generally do. If you do a mantra regularly, um, and you can ascribe it simply to the ability of mantras to help you focus and calm your mind, and the fact that everything in your life will be better if your mind is focused and calm. It just will be. It won't. If you have cancer, you'll still have cancer. Um,
Right. Right.
if you have heart disease, it actually might improve your heart disease. Um, but
True.
but and to some extent, it could even. I mean, there are strong connections between the nervous system and the immune system that actually can impact cancer if your mind is functioning better. Um, so, but still, you don't. So you don't have to say this mantra has the power to do that. Although that's generally the way that it's taught. But what Buddhist teachers do is one of the things that they do is they use this fact that people are very interested in mantras. Some people are. Some people are totally turned off by them. But some people think, oh, this is interesting. And also the fact that people very often do experience quite positive results from doing mantras. Um, and they use that as a way to encourage people to practice. And so one of the ways that you do that is you string a bunch of mantras together instead of just having somebody repeating one thing over and over and over again, which some people do. But you make it harder. You make it a little bit more complex. You make it last a little bit longer. You make it a little bit more difficult to learn. And I mean, there's a chant in our tradition, in the Korean tradition, called the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, which is like that's what you so the main meat of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra is the Great Dharani, which is almost I think without any question one of the most other than maybe Om Mani Padme Hum, um, people love chanting the Great Dharani. And the two reasons why people love chanting the Great Dharani is because they think it's really cool and it's very powerful and good for them, and because people very often experience positive results from chanting it. And so over the centuries, what teachers have done is that they've added stuff on to the Great Dharani to make it a more to make it a more difficult. I mean, to some extent, to make it a more difficult and more intense practice, just so that you. I mean, and they turn it into ceremonies that last for days. That require a very significant commitment, um, and And so it's like Dharma candy, is what Zen Master Hsuan Hua called it, Dharma candy, you know. And but it's real candy, you know, and it's good. But it's you know, it helps us, and so a lot of people like to think that they're above that, um, but I don't think we are, personally. I don't know. So like, if people don't want to know what a mantra is or what a chant means or what the words are, on the one hand that's okay, but on the other hand that's not good. People should want to know. You shouldn't chant. You shouldn't be. I mean,
Right.
well, first of
Who
all,
knows?
it's
Who
it.
knows?
You should have you know, an inquiring mind. Our practice is asking questions. Um, you know, one of the ways to make any mantra or chant into a Zen practice is to ask, who is chanting this, right? Um, but also, I mean, as long as you're asking questions, you should ask, what am I chanting?
Right. Right.
Wait a minute, what am I chanting? Uh, and uh, and if some Zen teacher says just chant, any good Zen teacher will insist that you should not just do or believe something just because they say so.
Right.
Zen Master Sung San would routinely tell people tell people something as a way of checking them or testing them, and if they accepted what he said, they failed the test. if you if you got a koan correct, he would say 80%. And then if you were just guessing, or if you weren't sure yourself, then you would say, oh, what am I missing, what am I missing, even though maybe you had given exactly the answer that he wanted. Or sometimes he would not even say 80%. Sometimes he would say, that's wrong. And I mean, it works the other way too. One time, Zen Master Daegak, I gave an answer to a koan that he liked, and I absolutely completely believed it. And so he said, "Oh, good, good, good." It was the wrong answer, and actually, it was years later that I finally realized. I said, "Oh, remember when I passed the so and so koan?" And he said, "No, no, you never passed that koan." I said, "Well, wait a minute. I said this, and you said he said, yeah, that was a good answer, but that's not the right answer, you know." And then, oh well, so uh, so what's my point? My point is just that, you know, so approval or disapproval or getting an answer or not getting an answer, it's still up to you to, I mean, if you don't want to know, that's not, don't know mine doesn't mean I don't want to know.
Right.
Don't know mine means you're trying to figure it out, and the only way you can know that you don't know something is if you're trying to understand it. Otherwise you're just being willfully ignorant, which is not good.
And it seems with these chantings,
Mhm.
I like the aspect. For me, it sort of says something a little more deeper, and also maybe a little more uh, former cultures, not just where Korean Buddhism was or is
Mhm.
now, where it was
Mhm.
in the 70s, but where it was perhaps 200 years ago, 500 years ago, with these types of mantras, and how they more than likely also came out of um, Southeast Asia or India,
Mhm.
as they sort of traveled along with this. But the chanting is also culturally accepted and done in those Asian countries, where in the U.S. we don't have a chanting culture, more or less.
We don't, but people like to chant. Given half a chance, there's often kind of a resistance for various reasons. But you know, I mean, like
Yeah.
one of the most popular teachers of the Dharma in the broadest sense, it is a guy named Krishna Das, and that's all he does. He travels around the country, putting on concerts, and there's sing-along concerts, which is what people love, and they're fairly easy sing-along concerts. He, says a line in Sanskrit, and everybody chants it back, and people love it. I mean, of course, not everybody loves it. Not everybody does it. Probably most people have never heard of Krishna Das, but in terms of spreading the Dharma in the West, that's an extremely popular practice. People love to chant Krishna Das.
Baba Hanuman.
Yeah. Oh.
I have
no.
him on. I do him a lot.
So, and I am very fond of one of his partners in crime, Nina Rao, who always travels with him. She usually plays the little cymbals or something. But her specialty is the Hanuman Chalisa. And that is her practice. And it's a wonderful, wonderful practice. It's even longer than the Great Dharani. And I love it. So I like to chant. I think, this is in response to chanting isn't really part of our culture necessarily. There's lots of things that are part. I mean, as he never really said this, but there's a famous saying attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, where someone said, "What do you think of Western culture?" And he said, "I think it would be a good idea." I mean, what is our culture? Uh,
Right.
Facebook and blue jeans, or and I'm on Facebook and I wear blue jeans, but I don't know.
Right.
Going on too long about this. I do want to show just one thing. I made this plug. I want to share my screen one more time, and then we don't have to wrap it up, but we're actually pretty much out of time. That doesn't mean that I have anywhere to go. But let me just get to, not this. Oh yeah, because I do have to actually click on this. If you click on the not that one, this one, the second book by this Tibetan guy.
You're going to send us these links?
Yes, I am. I absolutely am.
Thank you.
Yes. And you get to, the reason why I want to show this is because and this is free, okay? Oh, the aspiration of bright eyes. This is in chapter 4 is actually in the second volume of Khenpo Sodargye's 4-part commentary. He begins by talking about Master Oyi's a connection with Ksitigarbha. Master Oyi was a great teacher in China in the Ming Dynasty. So this is so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, just so you see that this is in. Here's you can see the table of contents up here, right? Yeah, this is like at the very beginning of the second volume, Master Oyi's connection to Ksitigarbha. So Master Oyi is actually the subject of the third book in our book series. Master Oyi is very, very, very closely related to Jijang Bosal. And Master Oyi was also very interested in this whole issue of fixed karma and Jijang Bosal's ability to help us with, especially with karma from past lives. So I want to just, I'm really impressed that Khenpo Sodargye, the other commentary by Hsuan Hua, he also refers to Oyi Jiju is his name, just because if you know a little bit about Chinese Buddhism and the history of Dizang, as he's called in Chinese, in Chinese Buddhism, Oyi Jiju is very, very important guy in that history, and that's why a book about him is included later on. Several months from now, we'll be reading that book together. I'm sorry. So I've rattled on and I've gone past our time, but I'm, how are we doing?
Great.
Very helpful. I feel like I'm benefiting a lot. My practice is kind of whirling, and this is
It,
I'm on the whirl with you guys, so that's helpful.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, questioning reality is good. That's kind of what you're doing, Blythe, and what you're encouraging the rest of us to do. But we don't want to be unhinged. We want to be able to, like Zen Master Degak always says, don't eat off of other people's plates, right? I mean, there is no self. The idea of self is an illusion. But eat off of your own plate, which is, you have to stay grounded.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good one.
It
That's
is.
a good
Yeah,
one.
I don't like it when people eat off my plate. That's for
Well, I mean, and some people do, and it's not because they're enlightened. It's not because they've seen through the illusion of self. It's I don't know why it is. Why do people eat? So
I don't
oh, that looks good. I mean, I could see it if somebody says, "Can I try some of that?" But well, and so actually, so I'll just say one more thing about it. So some people don't have enough of an understanding of the practical existence of a self. I'm here, Elizabeth is over there, Joe is down there, Blythe is there, and that's necessary. Otherwise, we couldn't talk together. Otherwise we couldn't share this experience together. In yeah. Otherwise, you can't help somebody if you say, "Oh, you don't exist." And so there is a certain amount of understanding the relative truth of it, to throw around a Buddhist term, the relative truth of the self, and the social niceties, like not eating off of other people's plates, or not taking other people's shoes, or not, when you go to a retreat, you walk out the door, you grab your own coat and your own shoes, right? You get in your own car and drive to your own home, you know. And if you don't, actually, if you don't get those things, all of those right, then it's not. Then you're not just rude. You have a screw loose.
Does that mean you can't come back?
So that's a matter of some debate.
Right.
What do you do about people who have screws loose? I mean, we all have we all have some, rattling around. So you have to, you can't. You basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't get excluded, right? You want to make sure that things are tolerant enough so that your own mental deficiencies are allowed. But how much further out do you go? In your inclusiveness, do you go to the extent of including the people who take other people's cars and drive off with them, which probably you don't want to do. All right, so in 2 weeks we'll meet again. That will be April. That will be the second Tuesday of April, which will be April 11th. I think that's correct. And so I would say it'd be good to continue discussing Chapter 4. Although officially on the schedule, we're going to go up through. Going to begin in April. We should get up through Chapter 8. And then in May we're going to finish. But the schedule, like fixed karma, we're going to finish with the sutra. It's not fixed in stone, and it's important to not be too attached to things that are written down. We'll take it as it goes.
Hey, let me just say this. I read chapters 5 and 6 today. Brace yourself, everyone, because he's talking about hells again, the list of hells.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So that is something. That's a good point, Joe. It's not like, oh yeah, okay, we're done with the hell stuff now. No.
And also one thing, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. They were talking about, I guess, being reincarnated as females, and it was very, very sexist. And
Yes.
it was like saying, and if you're a female with an ugly face or something, you can get out of that karma.
Oh,
Oh, I couldn't believe it. Like,
yeah.
wow. Wow.
Oh,
Right.
Was that
And so when you come upon things like that, it's good to one, just because it's written doesn't mean it's true, even if it's supposedly in a sutra. Second, it's also good to say, well, what does it really say? So, like, I have access to the original Chinese, which I can kind of make out, and
interesting?
and then three, it's good to have access to commentaries, or people who will, maybe help explain why the hell does it say that, which is a legitimate question, um,
Hmm.
when you encounter something like that. Yeah, we've seen already that the two most important stories about Jijang Bosal's past lives are when he was a woman, and so that's already kind of set down. So anything that comes after, you have to keep keep it in that context. Any supposed shortcomings of women, um,
Hmm.
well, what about the story of Bright Eyes and the Brahmin girl?
Right.
Those are you know the main stories about Jijang Bosal.
Yep.
And bodhisattvas don't have a gender. Buddhists don't have gender. They don't.
Huh?
They don't have a
Oh,
gender.
okay. Okay.
Even though sometimes some people say they do.
Hmm.
But those people
True.
are wrong. I'm not
True.
Well, I
enlightened, but
always heard that about Avalokiteshvara, that Avalokiteshvara was
has no gender or
some kind of both.
yeah.
Or,
I mean, Avalokiteshvara is almost always referred to by us as a she. Instead, unless you're reading historical books and you know that Avalokiteshvara was used to be he. He,
Right.
she, maybe she went through a transition. I don't know. I mean, some people do say that, or think of it in those terms. Why
Take
not?
a trip. Take a trip in the art museum, like Chicago Art Institute, through the Indian art. You'll meet him as a man, and then in the Chinese art, you'll meet.
Well, and very, very often, Avalokiteshvara is in Chinese art is portrayed as androgynous.
Right.
that's what I androgynous.
And
Yeah.
so there's a wonderful painting of Avalokiteshvara where she has a little mustache
Right.
and kind of a pot belly. It almost looks like, I don't know if it's like a beer belly or maybe she's pregnant. And then there's a little baby sitting down at her feet, looking up at her with a kind of a confused look on the baby's face. Or at least I always think that the baby looks very confused because it's like, mommy?
Right.
Anyway, all right. So we should recite the four vows together and then probably end. Is that okay? We do that.
mhm.
Thank you everybody for your
Thank you. I
wonderful
appreciate your
discussion.
all's patience.
Thank you all.
Were we patient? Oh, yeah. I don't have a stick or anything, so we'll just do it without sound effects. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. May whatever excellent qualities we have gained from this practice be extended for the benefit of all beings. Thanks again, everybody, and I will get the links out to people, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, if not before. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.